Everybody, so welcome to the analysis video for the books that I shared with you this week. We're going to start here with one. I love the way that Catherine Otoshi has used white space. I mean, it's just brilliant. Look at how it causes you to focus on the main character, the protagonist of the book, okay? And then the very first thing that we hear about Blue is that he was a quiet color, okay? And she uses watercolor here. So that's the media she's using. I think that's very clear. She's using watercolor, and you can see how you have a concentration of color here, lower in the page, and then you've got this lighter color around. So I think what that really does is it helps to show us a little bit of stability, right? Because we have the concentration of color near the bottom, so it feels safe, right? Blue feels the best. He feels the safest, so he thinks, because he's a quiet color, when he's being intrinsic, right? When he's intrinsically just closed off and kind of just, to himself. And this, the motion I'm doing right now, that's the type of feeling that this color and the detail Catherine Otoshi has created with just very simple images. And I just think it's great. So we talked about how diagonal lines, diagonal movement, direction in picture books can show movement, excitement, perhaps even danger it could be, but something is happening. And so we see that. He enjoyed looking up at the sky. I love that she's showing things that are also blue, but a different type of blue than the character blue. So we're seeing these long sweeps here to create clouds and atmosphere. He enjoyed looking up at the sky, and look how there's the angle up of this circle to show that he is actually looking up, right? That he's doing what she says he's doing. He loves floating on the waves, and so we get him right here, nestled in between the curvature of this wave here, which is just brilliant. The concentration of color here is upward because he is moving, and he's moving this way. And then we see here, and on days he felt daring splashing in rain puddles. And then we see him with this diagonal, right, going upwards. We see the concentration of color much higher in the center of his being, right, which is what that dot is going to be representing. And then we get the little splashes going in a diagonal from that little puddle. So that shows us that, he's having fun, it's excitement. And we learned from Molly Bang and how picture books work that is how this works, that's what she's showing, and it works. These are all those principles that are outlined very clearly here. He wished he could be more sunny like yellow, and I love this depiction of yellow because you can see that it looks like a little sun. You see little sun rays beaming out from behind that concentration of bright color. When we talk about bright light green, here she's using the paint to show darker areas within the circle, right? So that there's like this inner light coming from green. Bright, bold, in other words. And then here, or more regal like purple. And purple looks regal because purple looks like purple is standing up straight and, being proud of purple's self. And we see a concentration of color here, but then a little outward reach that makes purple look a little bit taller, right? And a little bit stretched. Or outgoing like orange, which I love this little halo, if I can find it right, this little halo that's kind of radiating outside of orange. So orange is, outgoing and just kind of radiates personality, and blue, who is to himself, wishes that he could be more like that. And then we don't see red yet, but we get an introduction to red, except when he was with red. Okay, so we know something's coming. Now red, of course, is the color that expresses very strong emotion, potential anger, potential danger, right? Passion, excitement. And so we see here that red is always pictured this way. A very deep concentration of color. She could even enter and use acrylic paint for this. And so red was a hothead. and we see Blue kind of cowering over. Do you see just that little subtle, he almost looks like a little jelly bean here, but just that little cowering over gives us the emotion that she wants us to see from Blue. And when Blue feels Blue, he just turns into a little puddle. So just really, really brilliant use of color, white space here. The white space keeps us focused a lot on the characters and exactly what's going on with them. We see the body language here, or the dot language, for how Blue is being consoled by Yellow. We see how they're all stunned, frightened, afraid, right, scared straight by Red when he comes around. And then just like in Laura Vaccaro-Seeger's Bully, we see Red, as he bullies, getting bigger and bigger and kind of overtaking the entire page. And we still see that heavy concentration of color there, which signifies that, right? It's important that we see that. And he grew so big even that now he's more of like even an oval shape, and he's kind of leaning over them, and he's making everybody sad. Everyone's turning into little puddles. And when we see One for the first time, she describes bold strokes, squared corners, to emphasize strength, to emphasize that One is not going to turn into a puddle. One is not going to cower in this situation. He will not be intimidated. And it is what it is. So even when we see the other colors still being scared, we see One standing his ground, pointing up straight like an arrow. So in this book, we just see some really wonderful, wonderful things here. We don't get to see, I think, as much of the personality of the colors once they turn into numbers, right? Because now they're all equals, right? Now that they have all turned into numbers. I love this where she's talking about Red growing hotter and hotter, and you can see the detail around the outside. It just looks like Red is just seething from within. And if you can look really closely, then you can see the inside of that circle, right? Where it almost looks like her brush or her finger just went like this in the middle to really concentrate that color there. And you can see it looks like steam up here where it's a little lighter coming out of Red's head or hair. So I just love how this is shown. She does a wonderful job of doing that. We see a heavy concentration of color here in the middle of the circle just as Red becomes more and more angry. And then just like Bully from Laura Vaccaro-Seeger, we see Red starting to shrink, which is great. And Red is still Red here. Red is still bold, right? We don't see the same kind of detail that we would see from watercolor here. We don't see that at all. We still see Red being very concentrated. But as a result, we get the idea that Red is still Red, right? Red is still himself, but he's been kind of cut down to size a little bit. And then when he starts thinking, hey, I can join the fun, just like Bully comes back and asks his friends, can I play? Do you want to play? Then Red ends up turning into 7, and then all these other colors are signifying to celebrate the fact that he is now a part of this and that everyone can count. And there's that. That's the book. That's the analysis. So for this one, it's very straightforward. What she's able to do, the emotion that she's able to generate and just transmit through these visuals it's used in so many different ways. I'm blown away by it every time I look at it. I'm tickled by it because it's so easy to understand and to capture. So this is the analysis of one. Looking at press here. Okay, so obviously this is a book that feels very much like a postmodern picture book. It subverts everything that we know about how picture books work. The reader is a participant, but really the participant that keeps the story going. Again, the use of white space. I love to use it talking about one as well, because literally these artists and illustrators have these authors and illustrators have told an entire story um, using dots. Okay, dots that we care about, dots that amuse us, dots that tickle us pink. And that's no easy feat. So I really do see true artistry in that. And of course, the use of white space is needed in order to go from page to page, in order to see the difference. And so this gives you movement through the book. It gives you progression. It also tells you where it can be contained, because in the very beginning, we see this contained just on one side of the page. But as this thing builds, it gets bigger and bigger, and it gets too big for just one page. And so once that page starts to be filled, we think, well, what else can we do? Now we have a full page. Well, let's jumble them up and then make them go on to other pages. And so this is where the story grows. It gives you that sense of it's growing now, it's happening now, it's something bigger than you and I, it's something bigger than what we can control, it's better and bigger than something that we can predict. And I think that is the delight in this story. So very, very cool. And then seeing them move from one side to the other gives that same movement, and it helps to carry the book as well, which is really important tool. The Black Book of Colors. The lack of color is genius. If I were to ask you, what does a picture book need? What does it require in order to be considered a good picture book? You would automatically say, well, colors. Color, of course. It needs color. It needs words and color and a story and a character. And the character is someone that we never see. We never see. But we don't need to see him. We don't need to see Thomas, because what's important in this story is not Thomas himself, is not being able to picture Thomas, but being able to identify to him, with him, through how he sees the world. That's something that's so special about this book, is that a faculty that most of us rely so heavily upon, the faculty of sight, is something that we don't need in order to enter into this world and connect with this character in particular. And that is something that I think is just fantastic. I love, love, love this book. And this definitely inspires a tactile experience, much like Press Here, which is why I put these 3 books together. And now this is something, this is a totally different medium used in order to create illustration. So it's not like the other things that we talked about. It's not like watercolor. It's not like acrylic. You are illustrating with more so a lack of media, more than anything else. And so you require, just as Thomas relies upon his other faculties, taste, smell, touch, in order to move through the world and to experience it, we're able to do the same. We too are not able to see everything and engage with everything through sight, but rather via our other faculties, our other senses, because even the sound of these words are so poetic. And I just love the poetry of this book. This book is a living poem with pages. And so is the experience that is created by it. And that's one of the things that I love about it so much, and why I wanted to share it with all of you. So I hope you enjoyed this week's books, and stay tuned to next week where we will look at some more. Thank you. I'll see you next week.